Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Tuesday, I hope you all are doing well. It is the game preview. Everton taking on Newcastle United away from home at St James's Park tomorrow evening. Frank Lampard's side look for redemption after Saturday's defeat to Tottenham Hotspur away from home, and another really difficult away fixture for Frank Lampard's Everton. This one going away to a Newcastle team who obviously are in a very good moment at the minute in terms of the feeling around the football club, the new owners, the amount of money that they spent in the summer transfer window just gone. The overall feeling around Eddie Howe from the Newcastle supporters is very much a positive one, and Newcastle are very certainly a team that are on the up. I actually remember this fixture last season when Everton travelled down to St James's Park, and it was a game where Newcastle had, I think, just about gotten the new ownership over the line, and there was again a sort of feeling around the football club that things were looking better. However, it hadn't been too long before that they were in a real sort of bad situation, and they were looking at themselves as one of the potential contenders to be relegated last season, and obviously that changed very quickly for them when those new owners come in, and obviously Steve Bruce was sacked and Eddie Howe was brought in. But there were definitely periods of last season where Newcastle fans felt like their club were in danger of being dragged in to a relegation battle that of course Everton were very much part of. Very different fixture this time around, of course, very different circumstances for both sides. Certainly for Newcastle, who, of course, as I said, are very much a club on the up at the moment, with the, as I said, the new ownership, the fact that they're now able to spend a ridiculous amount of money, £200 million odd in a summer without even blinking an eye. They've just bought a £70 million striker in Alexander Isak, who unfortunately for them, fortunately for Everton, but unfortunately for them, is out now for a sustained period of time with an injury. They've been able to strengthen their team with the likes of Kieran Trippier in there and various other players. And Everton, of course, are in a very different situation in the sense that we've gotten an awful lot better as well. We've strengthened our team, certainly in the defensive and midfield areas, bringing in the likes of Conor Cody and James Tarkowski, who are two real big leaders, two players that have obviously had a positive effect on this Everton team this season. The likes of Amadou Onana and Idrissa Gana Gueye coming in the midfield, having positive effects as well. So a very different fixture to the one at St James's Park last season, and a very difficult fixture for Everton as well. Newcastle have had a good start to the season, as I mentioned, currently sitting 6th in the Premier League, 10 games played, 3 wins, which is only one more than what Everton have managed this season. However, I suppose the difference maker is they've only lost 1 game, which is the exact same as what Tottenham, Manchester City, and of course Arsenal have managed as well. Everybody else has lost 2 or more. 6 draws in between that as well for Newcastle. So they've had a very sort of, an inconsistent start in terms of being able to finish games. But you look at their last 5 fixtures, draw last time out, draw the time before, 2 wins on the bounce, and a draw the time before that. 15 points currently they are sat on, which is 5 points ahead of Everton, of course, who are coming off the back of a couple of straight defeats. The last game obviously being a draw against Manchester United, a game that, again, could have gone either way. Some big decisions in. I feel Newcastle probably should have had the penalty in that game, if I'm being honest. However, I also feel Manchester United had a perfectly good goal ruled out for just woeful refereeing. But then before that, a real dominant 5-1 victory against Brentford at St James's Park, a 4-1 victory away from home to Fulham. Prior to that, they had, as I said, a couple of draws on the bounce against Bournemouth, and Newcastle lost their only loss of the season coming against Liverpool, which was through a 98th minute winner in a game with only 94 minutes added on. As I said, a draw with Wolves, and managed to get a draw out of Manchester City as well early on in the season, after starting the season with a 2-0 win against Forest and a goalless draw against Brighton as well. So their only game that they've actually lost this season was a game at Anfield, in which they were extremely unlucky. They had a goal ruled out for offside, and as I said, they conceded the ultimately the winner in the 98th minute, 99th minute, whatever it was. Seems like Newcastle are used to conceding 97th minute winners on Merseyside, which is interesting. As I said last time, these two teams met was at Goodison Park, of course, in that game that again was one of the catalysts for Everton's fight for survival. I don't think it was the catalyst, because we obviously had the wins against Chelsea and Manchester United, which were equally as important. But that game felt very, very special. The fact that we'd had a man sent off for a challenge that he should never have been sent off for in Alan. The fact that, we had a fella run on the pitch and, zip tie himself to the goalpost for 10 minutes. 10 minutes added on extra time. We scored in the 9th minute of extra time. It was Alex Iwobi. It was almost the start of, this new era, if you like, or this new stage of Alex Iwobi's career. The start of that was almost that Newcastle game. I know he'd been playing well before that, ever since Frank Lampard had come into the football club, but that game was almost the game that he arrived on the scene and was like, right, okay, I'm gonna make an impact now, and what an impact he's made in those few months since. But as I mentioned, this is a very, very difficult game of football for Everton. Newcastle are very much certainly a team on the up, as I said, losing only one game this season, and it was a game that, they would class themselves as unlucky to lose. 6th in the Premier League table at the moment, and have strengthened massively in the summer. The likes of Nick Pope, Sven Botman coming in, of course, from the Dutch League, and even players that were already there are vastly improved. The likes of Miguel Almiron, who has found a new lease of life at Newcastle this season. Bruno Gomes, who at the moment is looking like one of the top midfielders in the league. They've obviously brought Kieran Trippier in, Callum Wilson, who will play this weekend because of the injury to Alexander Isak, and Callum Wilson, who always seems to score against Everton. So hopefully that case can be broken tomorrow. We know the likes of Jacob Murphy, who again maybe hasn't hit the heights that he would have expected to hit, but still a very talented player. Joe Willock, of course, who come in from Arsenal not too long ago. Dan Burn, Sean Longstaff, a whole host of good players that, ultimately are being managed. Nick Pope, of course, coming in from Burnley, forgot to mention Nick Pope. Good, solid players that are being managed by a really good Premier League manager in Eddie Howe, and this is most certainly a task for Frank Lampard tomorrow. This is most certainly a difficult game of football to go away and win. We're at St James's Park, which is a ground that generally generates an atmosphere, especially against Everton, because there's this weird sort of made-up rivalry between Everton and Newcastle that was completely formulated by Newcastle fans during the days of Alan Pardew. I don't see it personally. There's not even a comparison. Everton are a much bigger football club. Okay, Newcastle are in a better position at the moment, but so are many teams. It doesn't mean we should automatically have a rivalry with them because of that. But for whatever reason, there is that rivalry, and that means that the atmosphere is always sort of heightened whenever Everton go to St James's Park. Maybe a big part of that is the Jordan Pickford thing, with Jordan obviously being a Sunderland fan growing up and having that rivalry with Newcastle. Frank Lampard was interestingly asked about that today, and asked specifically about Jordan Pickford and how he feels ahead of this fixture specifically because of that rivalry. And Frank effectively said, listen, Jordan's a professional, he's a mature professional, he's a grown man, and he will go into this game in the exact same way as he goes into any game, and that is ready to perform and ready to ultimately do his best and do everything he needs to do to get Everton the points. But it will be difficult. It will be difficult. Having said that, I don't think this is a game we should be fearing. I don't think Newcastle are a team we should be looking at thinking this is completely out the realms of possibility for us to get something in. We've got a couple of favourable fixtures after this one. Palace at home, I think, is a game that you would look at and think we should win. But this one, again, I think is one of them that we all know will be difficult and can be difficult. Newcastle have got a couple of key injuries to key players in Alan St-Maximin and Alexander Isak. However, again, I just don't really think Newcastle are the team that people seem to think they are. Now, don't get me wrong, they've had a great start to the season. They've only lost one game. They've had a lot of draws this season, as I said, and they've got a couple of players out now which will, quite clearly hinder their progress because of the quality that those players bring. But I just think this is a game that Everton can attack and Everton can approach in a positive manner and get something positive out of as well. For as good as this Newcastle side is and as much as they've improved, and when everybody's fit, okay, maybe it's a different story. But we're not talking about a Newcastle side with a £70 million striker in there. We're talking about a Newcastle side with Callum Wilson up front, who does always seem to score against Everton. But again, with Connor Cody and James Tarkowski in there, maybe that will be different. Hopefully that will be different tomorrow. Alan St. Maximum isn't in there to cause havoc on our fullbacks. Now, okay, they've got other players that can step in there and do a job. As I said, Almiron's had a really good start to the season. Kieran Tippier's been great as a fullback. But I do think Everton should be going into this one believing that we can get something out of it. One thing is absolutely clear is two things that are absolutely clear is A, we have to be much more clinical than what we were on Saturday against Tottenham Hotspur. If we get another 2 opportunities like the ones that we had on Saturday, we simply can't afford to miss them. And look, I've watched the highlights of that game back, and I've watched both opportunities, and Onana's is maybe a little bit unfortunate that it drags out to a little bit of a tight angle, but I still think he should be hitting the target as a professional footballer. And Damari Gray's, listen, I had a couple of comments yesterday talking about Damari Gray's chance bobbling up in front of him. I'm sorry, but it's utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense. The reason it's bobbled up in front of him is because he's not got the ball under control. The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is the best stadium in the country by a country mile. And I can say that having been to most stadiums in this country. The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is the best stadium in this country by some distance. The pitch on the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is one of, if not the best pitches in the country. So the ball isn't bobbling up because there's a lump in the grass, or it's not like a Sunday League game where you go, the ball bobbled up in front of me because of this rough, patch in the grass. No, the pitch will be like a carpet. It will be like when you get a new carpet in your house and you walk on it for the first time with no socks or shoes on, and you feel it through your feet, and you're like, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. That's what it would have been like. So I'm not sitting here and willing to take the excuse of the ball bobbled up for Damari Gray. He should have done an awful lot better, and that's one thing that we're going to have to do tomorrow, is if we get opportunities like that, we're going to need to do an awful lot better with them. I actually think we will see a change or two tomorrow in the team lineup. I think we're guaranteed to see Anthony Gordon come back in for Dwight McNeil, because Dwight McNeil's done absolutely nothing on Saturday to suggest that he deserves to stay in this team. And I've got a sneaky suspicion, and it is only a sneaky suspicion, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that we'll see James Garner start his first game as an Everton player. Now, I don't know who that will be for, because ultimately, it's very easy to sit here and go, well, it'll be for Idrissa Gana Gueye, because, he can't play 2 games in a week. But I think that's maybe doing Idrissa Gana Gueye a little bit of a disservice. I think he's more than capable and more than fit enough to play 2 games in a week. Whether Frank Lampard wants him to is a completely different question. But I just think Frank will maybe change it up a little bit. I hope he doesn't revert back to the 5 at the back formation, because I just don't think it works whatsoever. And I don't think it will work tomorrow against this Newcastle team. But I wouldn't mind seeing maybe Garner in there, James Garner, as the forward midfielder out of the 3. And maybe Iwobi doing the 6. Maybe Iwobi sitting back and playing in the 6 role, and having Onana in between them, doing the sweeping up, and then Garner to come on with 15-20 minutes to go if need be. Another thing we need tomorrow is much more creativity. We had no shots on target against Tottenham, and other than those 2 chances that we mentioned, we had nothing else in the game. We didn't have another single chance that you looked at and you went, that's an opportunity to score, other than the 2 that Onana and Gray blasted over the bar. So we need to be more creative tomorrow. It's as simple as that. And that's difficult because, as we mentioned yesterday, there is very little creativity in this team at the moment. Even the wingers, Gray, McNeil, Gordon, they're not creative players whatsoever. Okay, on their day, you might have a game where Gordon scores, and I think Gordon will be more beneficial tomorrow than McNeil, because Gordon's better away from home for a start. But he's not particularly creative for other people. Neither is McNeil, and neither is Damari Gray at the moment. So we need somehow to find that creativity from somewhere, and that might take a little bit of switching around by Frank Lampard. That might take James Garner being in there and maybe playing in there, and maybe he finds a bit of creativity. That might take, I don't know, Dwight McNeil playing on the left with Dom up front to be able to swing that ball in. I don't know what it will take, but we cannot wait until January and just have no creative plan between now and the World Cup. No plan between now and the World Cup for the lack of creativity that is in the team. We've got to find a solution because at the moment it's numbingly obvious how much of a lack of creativity we've got, opposite to what Newcastle have got. Who've got 2 or 3 players in there that create chances, that create opportunities for their forward line. So, as I said, it will be difficult tomorrow. It will be difficult to find that creativity. It will be difficult to ultimately break down a team that are in a really good moment at the minute. Decent run of form in the league, as I said, only lost 1 game this season. And even that game was one that, on another day, the referee does his job properly and blows up. But I also think St James's Park can be a little bit like Goodison in the sense that if things aren't going their way, the crowd can, I don't want to say turn on the players and the manager, because as I said, they're in a good run of form at the moment, but the crowd can pile the pressure on, the crowd can pile the noise on, and that can go in their favour as well, as it did at St James's Park last season when the crowd were loud and up for it, and we just completely crumbled under the pressure. I don't think that will be the case again tomorrow, because as I said, we've got a lot more leadership in the team. We've got a lot more solidity in the team. We've got we've got players in that team ultimately that aren't going to crumble under the pressure of an away crowd, or of a home crowd, sorry. However, if we can find a way to steer that crowd up and wind that crowd up, whether that be rolling around on the floor, whether that be putting in hard tackles, whatever it may be, then I think we should do it, because again, we can use that to our advantage, as teams have done at Goodison for years and years and years. But look, there's absolutely no, there's no going around the fact that this will be a difficult game of football. Frank Lampard's had his press conference today. He did confirm that Mason Holgate had returned to full fitness and will be available for the game tomorrow. He said Yerry Mina has suffered a slight knockback in his rehabilitation, which we already knew about anyway, because we spoke about that before Saturday's game. And Ben Godfrey is back on the training pitch, back on the grass, but obviously is quite some distance away from being available to play. Interesting about Mason Holgate. Will we see Mason starting? I mean, I'm going to do my predicted starting 11 in a little moment, so you'll see whether I think Mason Holgate should start or not. Spoiler, I think Mason Holgate should start. But it will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Frank does in respective of that. It'll be interesting to see what Frank does in respective of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It will be interesting to see what Frank does in respective of Anthony Gordon, Damari Green. I'm sure Anthony Gordon will start this game, and probably rightly so, considering I don't think there's much of a difference between his performances and Dwight McNeil's performances at the moment, but I think he gives a little bit more than Dwight McNeil. But will Dom start up front? Is he fit enough to play? Again, he was asked about that today, and it was all very much the same of, we've got to be careful that we don't rush him back. We've got to be careful that, we need him to be ready for the minutes that he's playing, etc. And I suppose it's the same conversation with Mason Holgate. Is throwing Mason Holgate straight back in there after having after him having a couple of months off injured, is that the most sensible thing to do? But then you look at the flip side, is playing Seamus Coleman 3 times in 1 week the most sensible thing to do? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So it's interesting. It's really, really interesting, and ultimately there's big decisions to be made by Frank tomorrow, because I think if we do lose this game, I don't think, I said this yesterday in the review to the Spurs game, I don't necessarily think the pressure will be piled on by Evertonians. I think there will be a lot of disappointment. I think there will be an admission of disappointment, given we'd lost 3 games on the bounce. But there would also be an understanding of the fact that 2 of those games were against, well, certainly one of them is against the side that will finish in the top 4. Another one was against the side that will probably finish in and around the top 4, and another one was against a side that are ultimately in the greatest, in a good run of form and in a good moment. And that's not me saying I expect us to lose or I'll be alright if we lose, because the media will start to turn their heads, the media will start to turn their attention, and as I said, the difference between Newcastle and Everton at the moment is Newcastle ultimately are at this point where if they lose a game, and they've only lost one this season, but if they lose a game, there's not a fear there that, that anything sinister will come from it. If Everton beat Newcastle tomorrow, they'll be disappointed, they'll be upset, but there won't be a feeling of, shit, we could get dragged back into the mud here if we have another couple of bad results. I don't think that's the case with Everton. I think there's still a lot of underlying anxiety and worry amongst Evertonians that when we lose a game, even, when we lost on Saturday, you're hearing talk of a potential relegation battle. You're hearing talk of a potential, similar season to last season. Now, I understand it because ultimately goals win games, and Everton haven't got goals in the team at the moment, and we haven't got enough creativity to create goals, so I get it. But a couple of weeks ago when we were beating Southampton, that wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind. The thought was, well, we're a couple of points away from a European place here. So that having that anxiety means that if we were to lose tomorrow, it'd be 3 losses on the bounce. Again, it would show that there was a lack of any real creativity or quality up front. And that anxiety of, shit, are we really more as improved as we think we are? We'll start to settle in. And that's why Everton desperately need the result tomorrow. I think a point would be acceptable, but 3 points, of course, would be absolutely fantastic. Let's get into some of the live comments then before we do our predicted starting 11s. EFC Graphics says, I must say they've spent well and not just gone for the big names. Absolutely, they're stuck with FFP for now, says Philip. Yeah, but they'll get around that because they're bringing in ridiculous amounts of money into the league, so they'll get around that. Liam says, up the F and Toffees, it won't be an easy game tomorrow, but we need something really. These lot think they're elite anyway, let's wake them up. Wonderlust says, Newcastle is the last hard one pre-World Cup break, but it is winnable. The Blues says, going on, Cam, going to be a tough one this. I just hope people don't go in on the manager if we get outclassed. I don't think we'll get outclassed. Now, I'm not saying we won't lose the game, because of course you can lose any game of football, but I don't think Newcastle have got enough. And I don't think Everton are in a place to get outclassed anymore. Okay, maybe against Manchester City, they might turn up and turn, go through the gears because it's Manchester City and they're capable of doing that against anybody in the league, not just Everton. But I don't think there's any other teams, or certainly not many other teams in this league, again, Arsenal potentially at the moment, that could turn around and outclass Everton. And I don't think Newcastle are one of them. Now, that's not me saying they won't win, and that's not me saying they won't win comfortably. But I don't think they won't, or they can't win comfortably. But I don't think outclassed. I just think we've got our defences at the moment. There's too much solidity in there and quality in there to be outclassed. It's not a defensive Michael Keane and Mason Holgate at centre-half, or an injured Yerry Mina who you look at and you think, fucking hell, a team could put 5 or 6 past these today. I don't think many teams, if any, as I said, will put 5 or 6 past Everton this season. Also, Newcastle have got, obviously, significant injuries to a couple of their forward players that would cause us problems, which is positive for Everton. Besiktas forced to release Dele Alli statement, says Eugene. I don't know about that. Blue says, Newcastle have a fast front three. If we won't be able to dominate the ball, and if we leave space in behind them, they'll hurt us. Again, a couple of injuries in there as well. That Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is a marvel of sporting architecture. It really is. Eugene's going for 4-1 to Everton. Neil says, don't fancy us tomorrow, Cam. I'm already writing it off as a loss. I'm not. The Blues says we got outclassed by Tottenham, and you're like, but we didn't get outclassed. We got beaten, and they won comfortably, but we didn't get outclassed, did we? Because United won because of 2 individual mistakes, and Tottenham won a game because we missed 2 chances, and we gifted them a penalty, and then they hit us on the counter-attack. We didn't get outclassed. We got outclassed against Tottenham last season when they beat us 5-0, and we were absolutely all over the place. We didn't get outclassed this season, and that's not me saying it's good enough, because we had no shots on target. It was absolutely woeful. And going forward, as I said, our big issue at the moment is the lack of creativity and the lack of quality going forward. But we're not getting outclassed by anybody. Yeah, anyway, let's get into our predicted starting 11 ahead of this one then. In goal, I am going for Jordan Pickford because ultimately Jordan is the number one goalkeeper. I understand this whole thing of Jordan's past, relationship with Newcastle fans and with, the new, St. James's Park and pressure and all of that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, Jordan, as much as he made a mistake last weekend and as much as he was, you could probably say the reason we didn't win that game, there will be another 37 games this season, which Jordan will be the reason that we get something out of, or that we're not completely embarrassed, or that we win, or whatever it may be. So Jordan's the number one, and Jordan starts. I don't think taking him out would do anything, really. Back line, I'm going for Vitaly Mykolenko at left back. Of course, a centre-back pairing of Connor Cody and James Tarkowski. And I am actually going to go with Mason Holgate at right back. Listen, it might just be me, and this might be a little bit of a harsh observation, but I just think Seamus Coleman has been absolutely woeful recently. I really, really, really do. I think he's been really, really poor, and I think he was really, really poor the other day. He works hard and he puts himself about and he does what he needs. He does what he can, but I'm not really here to have this mentality of, oh yeah, well Seamus does everything he can do. Because that doesn't mean it's good enough, and that doesn't mean he should be guaranteed a place in this team because he does everything he can do. The reality is he doesn't offer anything going forward. So you can't say, well, Mason doesn't offer anything going forward, because neither does Seamus Coleman. And I think Mason is fitter. I think he's got more stamina. I think he's got more pace, and I think there's more chance of him being able to keep up with somebody like Kieran Trippier on that left-hand side than Seamus Coleman has got. So listen, the only mitigating factor of that is whether or not Mason's fit enough to start. But if he is, then I'd have Mason Holgate in there personally at right back. Midfield three, I'm going to go with Onana, Iwobi and Garner. I think, look, at the end of the day, James Garner is going to have to start a game of football for Everton at some point. And it's not like we're winning every game 2 or 3-0 and you're looking at it thinking, well, why change it? Because we're absolutely brilliant. Garner, again on Saturday, was good in the first half, very good in the first half, but very absent in the second. We obviously know we made the mistake against United that led to the goal. It's difficult because Garner isn't one of them players. It's not the same conversation as the Coleman conversation where we're sitting here saying he needs a rest. You need to rest him. I do think we need to manage Garner this season. I don't necessarily think playing 2 games, 3 games in 1 week is too much of a hard task for a player who is incredibly fit and has played at the highest level of football for the last 4 years of his career, 3 years of his career, whatever it is. However, I think whilst Everton have very little creativity and are lacking in that department, I think putting James Garner in there and trying something a little bit different and seeing what he can offer also brings a different element to Newcastle, because they're not expecting it and they don't know really what he can offer. But it just gives us more of a chance, I think, at maybe creating something and getting something out of the game. Again, if it's not working, you can always bring Garner on in the second half, and I'm sure he'd be able to get it and step in there and do a job. But it would mean Iwobi probably sitting back and maybe playing in that 6, or James Garner playing in the 6 and Iwobi playing a little bit further forward. Maybe even Onana further forward. But I am going to go with Iwobi, Onana and James Garner and take Garner out. And then front line, listen, I'd love to sit here and say Damari Gray, Anthony Gordon and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I don't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin will be ready to start, if I'm being honest with you. I just can't see it. Maybe for Crystal Palace at Goodison, maybe, but I've just got a sneaky suspicion and feeling that he won't be ready to start this game tomorrow. So I am going to go with Mopey, Gordon and Gray. And as I said, I'll sit here and I'll defend Mopey to the hilt, because, listen, Neil Mopey has had, how many shots on target has Neil Mopey had since he's joined Everton? 3 maybe? And he scored 1 of them against against West Ham. He should have scored the one in the derby, and he's maybe had another one which was tame. Other than that, okay, he hasn't done much. He hasn't offered much, but he's not getting the service. So, I'll sit here when Neil Mopey has 4 shots on target and doesn't score one of them and say he's not good enough, we need better. But whilst he's not getting that service, I think it's very harsh to sit here and criticise him. And for everybody saying, well, you've got to create that service for yourself. If Neil Mowbray was capable in a Premier League game of football at picking the ball up in the areas that he finds himself and creating an opportunity for himself and scoring, he wouldn't be playing for Everton. He'd be playing for one of the top teams. Fact of the matter is the players around them need to do better to create for him. His job is to put the ball in the back of the net, but he's not getting the opportunity to do that. And it's the same with Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. It's the exact same with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. If we come out of tomorrow and there's been absolutely no service, it doesn't matter whether it's Dom, Rondon or Mopey, we won't have scored. So, yeah, the service needs to be better. I am going to go with Mopey because I think there's more chance of him starting because of the fitness issues with Dom. Gordon comes back in for McNeil for me. He just didn't do enough to keep his place. I mean, Gordon hasn't really done enough to guarantee his place, but there's no other option. Obviously, Gray on the other side as well, who also needs to improve drastically. The chance the other day, I don't care whether it bobbled up, it was fucking awful. It was absolutely awful. David says Pickford didn't start against Newcastle away last season. Begovic did, I think. It was at Goodison, I think Begovic started. I'm pretty sure Pickford started at St James's Park. Let me just double check that one in case I am wrong. It was the 2021-22 season. That literally isn't the fixture that I was looking at. I wanted the one from the 2021-22 season, of course, which ended 3-1 to Newcastle. Jordan Pickford started that one. It was the Goodison game. He didn't start because he was injured. Begovic started because they turned up with the rubber snakes and the inflatable snakes, and he wasn't there, which was funny. But yeah, there you go. That is my predicted starting 11. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comments. The Blue says, what I mean by outclass was more along the lines of sitting back and playing direct. I didn't mean outclass and they smashed us. Just meant we didn't have the ability. Yeah, I agree. Fair enough. Wonder says, Real Madrid make mistakes. Palomero does, City does. The difference maker will be being able to, if we do misjudge something, mitigate the consequences and learn the right things from. Absolutely. And that's another big point tomorrow is we cannot make mistakes. Ultimately, 99%, if not 100% of the goals that we've conceded this season have come from our own doing, have come from our own mistakes, have come from our own problems that we've created for ourselves. That cannot be the case tomorrow. Callum Wilson notoriously has a good game against Everton. Now, granted, that's an Everton without James Tarkowski and Conor Cody, but he's a handful, he's a threat, he's big, he puts himself about, he's difficult to defend against, so we have to make sure that we can deal with him. And hopefully we will be able to do that and do that comfortably. But also, as I said, don't give them any opportunities. Don't give them an excuse to score. Don't give them an excuse to go one-on-one because we haven't got enough creativity to be able to go, well, we'll go and score two instead. So if we're not going to score, which hopefully we will, and I'm sure we'll have at least a chance, then we don't need to be giving them excuses to get a chance as well. Anyway, look, we are going to leave it there. It will be difficult. I'll be heading down to St James's Park tomorrow. The instant match reaction and the play ratings will be tomorrow night, but they'll probably be short ones because I won't get home till late. But obviously the review will be on Thursday with the preview to Palace being on Friday. So don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. It would mean a massive amount to me, and you will be notified when that instant match reaction and play ratings do go up after the game. This will be a difficult game, but it is a game Everton can win, and it's a game Everton should be approaching with a positive mentality and a positive feeling towards it because, Newcastle are a good team in a good reign of form, but it doesn't mean that they're going to wipe the floor with us, and they've got a couple of big injuries out as well, so Everton should be able to take advantage of that. Anyway, big thank you all for watching. Massive thanks to everybody for watching in the live comments. I really do appreciate it. If you watch this as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below, and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. But big thank you all for watching. As I said, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it as well, and join us for the instant match reaction and the play ratings tomorrow. Big thanks for watching. See you later.